Yeah, thank you very much, Jonas, for this introduction, and thank you for this broad attendance and all you being here and giving us the chance today to speak a bit about what experience we made so far with this UKCA marking topic regarding lifts and safety components. Maybe a short introduction about myself. My name is Jonas Conradi. I'm more than 11 years now in the lift industry. The last 3 years of which I was responsible for the new technologies department at TÜV Süd in the business area lifts and cranes. We deal with all topics related to certification and auditing within the scope of the EU lifts directive so far and all lift related standards. With the already mentioned legal entities worldwide, we are leading in this area. And like Jonas already mentioned, for more than 1 year now, we have been working intensively on the UKCA topic and have also applied to become an approved body in the UK already in autumn last year. And like mentioned, also, we were the first one, especially in Germany, who initiated this process. In the following, I will deal with the general requirements related to the UKCA label. So what you as manufacturer, for example, need to be aware of, and then specifically with the requirements for lifts and safety components. And above all, this will be about the individual roles and responsibilities you need to consider. The webinar primarily shall be seen as a general information and education, just secondary about how we can help in dealing with this issue. It's more about raising awareness, what you need to take care within the next weeks and months. To make it short and simple, already now one can say at this point, everything that used to be required in the EU for a CE marking is now required in the UK for UKCA marking. It's just under a different name, and you will need an approved body instead of a notified body earlier in the European Union. So let's get started. What it is all about is this mark you can see here. Obviously, all of you already have seen it, and already of you already know it. UKCA stands for UK Conformity Assessed, and it's for all new UK product marking, for all new UK products marking for certain goods placed on the market in Great Britain. And in Great Britain, it replaces the former CE marking from the European Union. There's a slight difference to Northern Ireland. I will come back to that later, but it's not too important, let's say it like that, but I will try to explain it a bit as well. All of it, of course, happened due to the Brexit because the United Kingdom left the European Union, and it already came into force at the beginning of this year, the 1st of January 2021. Even though there's a grace period, I will explain on the next slide. Okay, this is the official time scale. Where are we right now? This is what was just adjusted. Probably every one of you got the message that the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Safety just announced that the grace period was extended for 1 more year. This announcement was from the 24th of August. This means in detail right now, everything placed on the market before 2021 remains fully unchanged, so nothing to consider. That is what you can see under the column of existing stock. As UKCA has replaced CE for UK economic area since the beginning of this year. However, there is this now extended transitional period which applies from the beginning of this year until the end of 2022 now. So the hard deadline now is the 1st January of 2023. From then on, only the UKCA mark will be valid. I will later on explain a bit about a gray area or a loophole, which could be kind of a plan B or more to say plan C. But for now, what you can see here is the official timetable. And please allow me just one remark to the extension of the deadline now, that the deadline was extended by the authorities for according to my opinion, just underlines the importance and the urgency of the topic. If it would not be important, they just would have let it go and would have seen what happens. So I still, even though there is an extended timeline, I still highly recommend to start all UKCA related activities immediately if this did not already happen in your companies. It will help you a lot to start now to avoid capacity problems later or waiting times or any potential failures. So maybe you're asking yourself now, how is it possible that a German-based company like TÜV Süd is able to do conformity assessments for the United Kingdom markets? And this is because we have legal entities all over the world. This is what Jonas Straberger in his introduction already mentioned. With the legal entities, more than 1,000 sites in Europe, America, and Asia. We have a very broad basis, and the location in UK, which went through the accreditation process, is called TÜV Süd BABT. BABT is an approved body certified by UKAS, and the TÜV Süd BABT is a 100% part of the TÜV Süd group. And this structure allows that our lift experts from all over the world are able to operate in the name of BABT. Most of you know that in EU lifts and safety components need to be signed by the CE marking and the number of the notified body. For TÜV Süd Industry Service notified body in the EU, it was the CE 0036 ID number. In future for the UK, it will be UKCA 0168 in the UK as an approved body. And like already explained as well, the big advantage here will be that we can support as a EU notified body and as a UK approved body at the same time. And so you won't need to perform tests or do some work twice when as long as the regulatory requirements stay identical. So that means we will be your single contact and partner for all lift-related certification topics who can issue EU and UK certificates. This will save you at the end, I'm pretty sure, a lot of time, effort, and money. But right now, we must be fair enough. We are still waiting for the official approval from UKAS. From our side, everything is already prepared. We went through the whole audit process. We invested more than 1 year of work. We have no open findings anymore, and we are just waiting for the official go from UKAS. Anyhow, you can already come to us and we will support and help you with everything you will need because we can prepare everything in the background. Just the official start is depending on the official go from UKAS. So when we are talking about lifts right now, what is meant by lifts? And that is pretty equal to what was earlier already meant by lifts or safety components in the EU under the EU Lifts Directive. You probably all know the Annex 3, where the safety components are described, which are locking devices for doors, devices to prevent falls, overspeed limitation devices, buffers, electronic safety devices, or, for example, rupture valves. And on the other hand, we have the full lift as a system, which includes all those safety components where you need a final inspection on site from Then maybe some of you will raise the questions, what about voluntary certificates, which are not officially seen as safety components? How are they covered? Regarding that topic, one can see all components which did not necessarily need a notified body in the EU won't need officially an approved body in the UK, state of the art. If you did some voluntary certificates, for example, they are still okay for the UK, as well as they just state the conformity to a certain standard. But of course, it can be helpful for the market acceptance to have those conformity assessments from a UK approved body then as well. And of course, we will be more than happy to support you with that as well. As now, or as we know, or as most of you for sure also know, all EU directives have no legal basis in EU member states until they are transposed into national law. And for implementation into UK law for the Lifts Directive, the lifts regulations in the UK were introduced. This happened through a statutory instrument, the Statutory Instrument 2016 number 1093, which is the basis for all certification topics in the UK. And what now happened due to the Brexit, the UK is able to change things in this lifts regulation. Normally, directives have the character of a law in the EU, but due to the Brexit, it's now legally possible in the UK to make individual changes to the lifts regulation. And these changes are again made and implemented via statutory instruments. The statutory instrument that deals with the issue of Brexit is the so-called EU Exit UK statutory instrument, and it's funny to say it's the longest statutory instrument which was ever introduced to the United Kingdom. It's important to say at this point that the harmonized standards in the European Union correspond to the designated standards in the UK. These trigger the presumption of conformity. So, thus, it is clear that, as of now, everything tested according to a EU harmonized standard is also okay to the lifts regulation in the UK, because it's then also according to the designated standard. So in most cases, one can say right now, tests do not have to be repeated if you need to have a UK certificate and the UKCA label, and you already performed all those tasks under the EU lifts directive. So the original national implementation of the EU lifts directive, the lifts regulation 2016, which I already mentioned, is being and has been adapted and minimally amended via various statutory instruments since the Brexit became official. There are a lot of changes in this lifts regulation, but none of that are really far-reaching in terms of content. So if you ask me, it's a lot of wording. It's the delimitation of economic areas. One needed to, of course, change lifts directive to lifts regulation. One need to talk about the United Kingdom instead of the European Union. And there are some special cases implemented about Northern Ireland, which I do not want to discuss separately here, as CE is still valid for Northern Ireland. The statutory instrument on these slides are the most significant changes. That's why I placed them here. I think it's good to know that they exist. In my opinion, however, you do not need to know them in detail. So this is the slide where I already talked about earlier when I was talking about kind of a loophole. So far in my presentation, that was the complete official and general part of overall information. And before we get to the individual roles in the United Kingdom market, here's the announced note regarding the transition period. And I emphasize again then that one should start the UKCA activities anyhow immediately. Businesses are encouraged to be ready for full implementation of the new UK regime as soon as possible. However, to allow businesses time to adjust CE market goods in the scope of this guidance that meet EU requirements can continue to be placed on the market until the 1st January of 23, where EU and UK requirements remain the same. This includes goods which have been assessed by an EU-recognized notified body. You will still need to take action to ensure you comply with the new importer responsibilities, which I will explain later. So these are mandatory already now. And to explain this loophole a bit more, it's always about the time of placing a fully manufactured good on the market. And I want to read what is officially stated. A fully manufactured good is placed on the market when a written or verbal agreement or an offer of an agreement to transfer ownership or possession or other property rights in the product is exchanged. This also means that the part does not have to be physically in the UK. It must be produced and you need to have an agreement with the customer. It's better to have it written because then you can prove it. Then it's already placed on the market. And then you can still use it with a CE mark even after the 1st of January 2023. But this really should be just a plan B or C, because it would mean that you would produce something on stock and no one doesn't know right now if it will stay like this. The authorities already announced that they are changing some guidelines and guidance, so it's not clear whether that loophole will stay. But anyhow, I wanted to inform you about that. Okay, so now about what everyone must consider in their specific roles. And the roles in the UK under the UK lifts regulation are basically identical to those in the EU. The only difference is that you may now be on a different site, as the UK is now a separate economic area. From now, the point of view, from the point of view of someone in the United Kingdom, it's exactly the same as if they were currently in the EU and sourcing parts from a non-EU country like China, India, or somewhere else. The main issue in this presentation will be the responsibilities of the manufacturer and the importer. But there are other roles as well, and those roles have different responsibilities. So I already talked about manufacturer and importer, but we also will have the installer. We have the distributor and this special role, the so-called authorized representative. Starting with the installer, are companies that are placing lifts as a whole on the UK market. Analogous to the EU and the Annexes 5 and 8 in the lifts regulation in UK, there are now the Schedule 12 and 15 for this purpose of the final inspection. The installer that is new must be based in the United Kingdom and can't be based somewhere elsewhere. He declares, like in the EU as well, conformity and thus checks whether design, manufacture, assembly and placing on the market have been carried out properly. And then the UKCA mark is affixed with the ID number of the approved body that carried out the final inspection. So everything kind of identical to the lifts directive in the EU. Probably the most interesting point for most of today's participants will follow here. I assume that most of you are interested in the requirements and in the role of the manufacturer or of the manufacturer. The requirements for design, manufacture, and instructions, they are unchanged as they are defined and described in the designated standards. And like already mentioned, the designated standards, they stay the same, they are unchanged, the EN 8120 and EN 8150. In terms of responsibility and obligation, nothing has changed here either. It can only be that the manufacturer who previously sold from EU to EU now exports from EU to UK and must therefore check whether he has an importer in the UK or an authorized representative who supports him. This entails great responsibility for the importer and the authorized representative. So this must be well clarified between manufacturer, importer, and authorized representative. Are these parties involved aware of all the responsibility? And I need to say at this point, this is nothing where an approved body can help you or a notified body, because this is the full responsibility of the different duty holders, because the approved body is just involved in the testing procedure and the certification. However, what changes for the manufacturers is of course the marking, because now you will need a UKCA mark instead of the CE mark. You need a declaration of conformity, which was the EU declaration of conformity earlier. And of course the documentation is changed because it must be necessarily in English. The procedure has been changed in that it refers to the lifts regulations now. And for example, it will be Schedule 11 instead of Annex 4B in the lifts directive. not to forget here, you will also need, besides an official UK certificate, anyway, a factory inspection or a quality assurance system, a module C2 or a module E, to get the allowance to label your products with the UKCA mark. You will need that in addition to the certificate. So it's always a certificate and then a certificate of conformity to type or a module E. So it's not sufficient to take care of having UK certificates. You also need to have the allowance to use the ID number of the UK approved body. And you will also only get this allowance when you perform a module C2 or if you have a mod. The advantage in the future for you will be that we as TÜV Süd will be able to support you with both the CE and the UKCA marking requirements together from one single source, which can issue all certificates together. The required technical documentation depends on the product, of course. So it's one cannot say, okay, we need especially those documentation. So if you want to make a conformity assessment for a safety component, we will need other documentation than if you like that we confirm your quality assurance, for example. You can find the full list of all required technical documentation still in the lifts directive, or now for the UK in the lifts regulations in the schedules 11 to 19. Okay, and now we are coming to the role of the importer and the distributor. Those of you who already import from outside the EU already know that the procedures and responsibilities. In this example, they are importers already because they import from outside the EU. For most of you, however, it will be a question of your products now being imported into the UK. You will import into a new economic area. And an importer is the one who places safety components on the market. The distributor or retailer only makes them available and sells them. This means that the importer has a great deal of responsibility already now, even though the grace period is not over, and must additionally now affix or enclose his data on the components. This is for the UK to make sure they have someone in their economic area they can make reliable if something happens. The importer must ensure that the manufacturer has correctly gone through all processes for labeling beforehand and encloses the declaration of conformity. So the manufacturer is producing the declaration of conformity, but the importer has to check whether it is there. And he also needs to keep the documentation available and for 10 years. If you're a manufacturer based in the UK, of course, you do not need an importer. You will need one for the UK market, though. The question, therefore, is, are the current partners available of their responsibilities that, for example, a distributor now all of a sudden becomes an importer and has much more duties and responsibilities? That is one thing you really need to make sure and need to discuss with your retailers and distributors and importers now. And therefore, it can make sense to place an authorized representative in the. This way, the existing dealers or distributors can retain their role and responsibilities, and for them, nearly nothing changes, and the responsibility for yourself remains in your house because you give the responsibility to your authorized representative in the UK, who then also be, besides the authorized representative, the importer. The manufacturer can delegate certain or more tasks to the representative. And as I already mentioned, the representative could then be the importer within the own company. It is a question of who can be held responsible within the UK economic area. That is why this is so important. However, at the end, the manufacturer still remains responsible for everything. So, for example, the authorities, they will rely on their representative, but for sure, or on the importer, but for sure, they will go on and pass on if something will happen to the manufacturer. so far about the different roles. And again, for all those explained information, one must be sure to meet the requirements. And one sentence from my side as well. All information about the roles, that was just the general information from our side, but that is something really you need to take care of, where not the approved body or notified body can support you with, because that's more legal topics. In this table now, we have a good overview about what changes and how those marks will look like in the future. I think it's important to know that, of course, in the UK, we'll need technical documentation in English. And former in the EU, we had the CE mark with the EU Declaration of Conformity, and it must be available by someone in the EU. And for the UK now, it's the only Declaration of Conformity, so you don't need the EU, of course, in front of it anymore, and you don't need UK as well. And the incorporation is referring to the UK legislation now there, and must be available by someone in the UK, and it must be in English. Available in the UK means, okay, the importer needs to be able to show it. And the last part, that's the already mentioned part about Northern Ireland, which is a special case. UKCA is only for companies exporting from the United Kingdom to Northern Ireland. UKCA can never stand alone, as it is a marking from a UK approved body for a country which is part of the EU. So you would always need CE together with UKCA. And UKCA is not valid in Northern Ireland. When you have the CE mark, then you're good to go for the Northern Ireland market as well, and you won't need UKCA. This is now an example where I want to go through with you to just sum up everything I already mentioned to you. The described roles and the processes are summarized here again, and I would like to focus on safety components, because we are always talking about an individual good, not a type of good. So when you're, for example, produce a safety component and you're a non-UK manufacturer, then you will need a type examination and a random check or a quality system certified by an approved body. You will need to supply the declaration of conformity, and after you got the allowance from the approved body, you will mark your product with the UKCA marking and the approved body number, in our case the 0163, and then you have, as your role in the role as a manufacturer, you are gone through the process. Then the safety component will be shipped to or sent to the United Kingdom. So you will have an importer or an authorized representative over there who is established in the UK, who is responsible for the product, and who needs to have his registered trade name and a postal address on the safety component or on the packaging, for example. So that's the full process you will need to go through. I want to emphasize again, you need the certificate and you need the random check or the QS system. Okay, of course, I did not imagine or go through all those information by myself, and was thinking how this is working. We have some pretty good sources coming from the British authorities and the government, where they put everything together. And here are those useful links if you like to learn more about the UK laws. On the legislation.gov.uk, you can find all statutory instruments and how they are changing. And to mention again, the BEIS just announced that they will work on the guidance to supply even better support, to supply a better understanding. So again, I highly recommend, so did the BEIS in their official statement, meetings and webinars, to be UKCA ready as soon as possible, because if you are through this process and you have finished everything already, then you're on the safe side, because then it's existing stock and you don't need to do anything again. So I highly emphasize again to be fast and start all those activities related to UKCA now, the latest, if you did not already. Okay, as soon as we have the go from UKAS, we really can get started. That's what I already mentioned. That will only be possible once we are listed, but like mentioned, we already prepare everything in the background. We just need this official paper, and of course this takes a bit of time right now because there are a lot of application for different schemes and different areas in the United Kingdom. We already have a huge amount of work to do for sure, but I don't see any capacity problems. Yeah, that's why even because we have already a lot of amount of work, that is why we are already preparing everything in the background to be fast afterwards. So all offers, all certificates, all reports, for example. Therefore, please feel free to send us all your documents now so we can clarify as much or as many things as possible in advance. You can see a list of what we would like to see if it is possible. One can say you can send us everything, your former EU certificates, refer to, so all reports, all documents you have in there, one would need to see for the UK as well. So now after I went through all these rules and requirements, I'm sure there are still some questions which I am more than happy to answer. And of course, you can feel free to call myself as well or send an official email to our lift certification at tufsuit.com, where we collect all the emails and all the inquiries regarding the UKCA topic. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to hear about all the questions now.
Very good. Thank you, Jonas. And we've already received a lot of questions, and let us just start running through them. I would just like to go through them in the sequence as we've received them, and there are some specific ones which we may need to take offline then afterwards. Let's see how far we get into this. So the first question was what actually the reason was why the transition period has been extended by another 12 months.
Yeah, I would be happy to tell you, but I don't know, to be honest. Like mentioned, we are waiting for the official approval already for 3 months. Since we have done all our work, only can guess that the regulators or the government, they can't work faster because they have so much schemes where they got applications for. For sure, it was not the speed of the companies who want to become an approved body. That's what I can tell you.
There's another question which directly relates to that. So it is on how far we as TÜV are in the accreditation process, and what is the timeline the customers can expect that we get approved body?
Okay. Earlier we communicated that we assume that we will become an approved body in September, the latest. We had our final audit in June, and as I mentioned, we don't have any open findings anymore. So it could be possible that we can start from day to day. It can be today or it can be tomorrow, but we don't get an official timeline from UKCAS right now, unfortunately. But I assume it to be in September or October, the latest. And like mentioned, we already prepared a lot of things in the background, so we don't have a stock of capacity.
Okay, and then there's also a question whether you can elaborate a bit more on the approach for components which are not defined as safety components according to Annex 3 of the Lifts Directive.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that question. We got a lot of inquiries about that as well. For example, if you have the cabin door locks, they are not officially in the Annex 3, for example, they are not seen as a safety components, but a lot of the door manufacturer, they still let them certify because they, for example, need those certificates in other countries in Asia or something. And so far, one can say that is a voluntary certificate in the EU already. So someone was reaching out for us as a notified body, and we stated that this component is in conformity with the designated or harmonized standard. And so that's still valid, even though the regulation changed, because designated and harmonized standards are equal. But of course, it can be possible that in the UK, someone will ask for a voluntary certificate from a UK approved body, even though the content is exactly the same. But if you have deeper or more detailed questions regarding this, please feel free to contact me directly, and I'm sure we can help.
Okay. Then there is another one, whether the relevant standards or codes revert back from EN or BSN to BS.
I'm not pretty sure if I got that question correct, but I will try to answer it. And please feel free to specify it later on if it was not correct what I understood. So you mean if EN will work on their new standards, whether they will be implemented as well in the UK, probably, whether they will become designated standard in the UK. And from what we know so far, that should be like that. It should be like that, because there will be this overall change to the designated and harmonized standards, where the new EN 8100, I think it is, will be, and then that will be implemented to the UK probably as well, because those standardization organization overall, they will still work together, even though they are not in the same economic market anymore. I hope that answers the question.
And as you've already said, Jonas, in case there is, some more details needed, we are happy to answer those questions offline as well, and just reach out to us through this email address, which is mentioned on the slide, liftcertification@tufsuit.com. There's another question or comment and question. Here in MENA, so Middle East and Northern Africa area, we typically state EN or BSN requirements. Will this need to change? Regards from Dubai.
Here in I blank on that question, to be honest, because it's not about the UK directly, correct? It's about another economic area. Sorry, but if you need more details, please let us know, and I will answer it after the Q&A session.
And I think we can answer it, since we have quite a quite large footprint actually in Middle East as well, so people should know that. Yeah. Next question is, will there be any chance for a waiver, which is Ausnahmegenehmigung in Deutsch? I googled it myself, since I was not aware of the word. Since some sites are in installation phase for years, and if so, under which conditions?
A waiver for what is the question? A waiver for the factory inspection, or maybe one could help me with that question. I did not understand that fully. I'm sorry.
Let's see. Maybe the person who posed that question can specify in the chat. Yeah. Then I'll just move on. Whether you would recommend to designers that they sign up to BSI alerts for UK designated standards, so any possible changes are captured and appropriate measures can be put in place for products manufactured in the EU designated for sale in the UK.
Okay, I'm not sure whether there is such a kind of a newsletter right now, but of course it is the responsibility of the manufacturers and designers as well to keep on track or keep an eye on what is changing. Anyhow, we as an approved body, we need to double check whether the different directive and the regulation and the standards, whether they start to differ from each other as well. That's why we are involving in the EU and in the UK LIFT working groups as well. So it can be from both sides. We can reach out for you as customers that we see, okay, there were some changes and you need to do some work, or the other way around as well, that you found out something and you can consult us.
Okay. Very good. And as said before, in case there's any more details needed, then reach out to us again. There is another question. It's actually a long one, but I think you can straightforward answer that. I'll just read it out. You mentioned to place products on the market after January 1st, 2023, there must be an audit trail to prove an agreement has been made with a customer to supply and proof of manufacture from outside the UK. The product was ready for market, for example, with supporting certificate of conformity. And now comes the question. In our case, as a stockist, if we have product in stock on the shelf in the UK supported by a certificate of conformity with CE marking, are we still able to make available to customers for supply in 2023 as free stock awaiting customers' orders?
So in this case, it's really about the timeline again and the time of when something was placed on the market. And that was the official statement I read through earlier. A product is placed on the market when you have produced it, when you have labeled it, and when you have written or when you have a anyhow agreement with the customer. So when it's only on stock and it's not clear where it should go to, you don't have an order or even an offer. An offer would be sufficient as well. Then it's not officially placed in the market, and you can't use it after the 1st January of 2023 anymore. There could be some loopholes around that probably. If you have two companies, for example, of yourself, you could sell it from one to another or just send an offer, but that's hard gray zone, and I did not say that officially.
Okay, moving on to the next one. After the initial transfer of a EU TÜV Süd EU type examination for a safety component, will UK TÜV Süd rely on the quality checks of EU TÜV Süd to maintain UK type examination status in the future?
I think this question goes to the factory inspections, so that we go do the quality checks afterwards. I at least hope so that I understood that question correct.
Correct. On the whether UK TÜV Süd will rely on the quality checks of EU TÜV Süd.
Okay, okay, that's just a kind of structure which I try to explain, the structure between TÜV Süd BABT and TÜV Süd, let's say in Germany. So from Germany, we are acting on behalf of TÜV Süd BABT. So all the experts who are performing the EU work, let's say it like that, right now, will perform the UK work together. So you don't need to do that twice. It will be just one from us, from the German TÜV Süd, come there and will take care of the quality checks for UK and EU within one date.
Okay. Then there is only a comment on the very first question I read out, why it was extended by 1 year, and it said it was pressure from UK industry here, that they extended.
About that, of course, there was a lot of pressure from from the customers and from some other parties. I think from Leia, for example, as well. It's just guessing.
Yeah.
The real reason was.
Then the next one is for lifts, we have both, I think this should read out as EU type certification and design appraisal. What about UKCA certification for design appraisals?
It's exactly the same. Design appraisals can only be done by the approved body who certified your module H1. So if you have a design appraisal right now, I'm pretty sure you have a module H1 certified or audited by a notified body. What you will need now to use this design appraisal in UK, you will need a module H1 audit from a UK approved body, and you will need to have the design appraisal from a UK approved body as well.
Then there is a question also related to another one which we posed before, but an interesting one also. It says, we are manufacturer of components which are not considered safety components, but we normally apply for voluntary certification. If we get UKCA approval, what are the advantages of our customers who are European based and need to get UKCA for the safety components that use our products?
I tried to explain that earlier. I think that's, to be honest, for sure we can help you with that. And that would be not a huge problem for us. In my opinion, it's not necessary because these voluntary certificates just state a conformity to a certain standard from somebody, and it's not mandatory. But if you need it in the UK because someone insists on a UK approved body certificate, then it's okay, and you can use it for marketing purposes. But to my understanding, you don't really need it actually, even though it's not too good for us to say, because of course we can support you with that.
Okay, then question whether there is a list of organizations allowed to deliver UKCA marking for safety components, and I think you can just briefly answer that as well. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that there will be a list, but that will be supplied from the government, and I can't help you with that because those would be our competitors.
But you can answer it in a way that we can support, yeah?
Yeah, we can support you with all of it there, and I can tell you that there is right now no one listed who has been a recognized EU notified body from the EU so far. So obviously that takes some time for the authorities in the UK.
Then there is another question which I think we cannot answer here, whether there is any job or employment opportunities in TÜV Süd BABT. Yeah, I think that's a question we may need to take offline anyhow.
Sure.
But I think it's not a relevant one for this round. Then another one, which norms are harmonized under the UK legislation, same as under Lifts Directive 2014?
Those norms or standards in the UK, they are called designated standards now, not harmonized standards anymore. And those are basically the EN 8120 and EN 8150. You will find the list of those harmonized standards, designated standards, sorry, online. And this list also is in the slide with my links, which you can have on demand, of course.
Okay. And another one, specifying the question which we've received before on the topic of waiver des Ausnahmegenehmigung. So it says, can there be a waiver from UKCA marking as some products were delivered in the past, but will be put on the market after January 1st, 2023? Can you go for a waiver, or is this retrospective examination to be UKCA compliant requested?
No waivers so far for that process I would know from. I'm sorry.
Okay. Now, there is one last question I do have for now, at least none in the chat anymore, none additional ones in the chat anymore, which I can see. But what can a manufacturer do already today to get immediate guidance for the certification process for UKCA marking?
You can call me or send an email to liftcertification@tuvsud.com, and I can help you together with my team pretty fast. Because if you have already knowledge about CE marking, then it's of course it's a fully new certification one need to go through, but for sure there are some synergies and time savings when you have knowledge. So please feel free to send us an email, and then we can clarify everything, or call me directly.
Very good. We are right on time. Maybe let's give the audience or the attendees another minute to pose any potential questions. In case I don't see any question popping up in the next half a minute or so.
Again, I invite you to call me or send an email if you have further questions, for sure. Please don't hesitate to send those questions after the webinar as well. Depending on the interest of the market and the number of participants, we will have a second webinar on the 21st of September again. It will be the same content, the same presentation, but if you have some colleagues, for example, who couldn't join today, they are highly welcome at our second English webinar as well.
Okay. There's another question coming in, actually, whether we have the ability to test safety components in the UK.
Probably that's meant, it's meant whether we have a laboratory over there in the UK. And right now we don't have an accredited laboratory in the United Kingdom where we perform the tests. Normally our experience so far within the last 5 to 10 years is that it evolved more and more, that the customers don't want us to test the components at our labs, but at theirs on site. So that's what we normally do. We come to you and test it on site. When you have all those testing facilities on site, probably you have much more than we have because you're testing more consistently. But we have all laboratory and testing equipment in Germany available via our notified body. So if you don't have it, we can perform the test at ours.
Okay, and then there is another one. Hello, I'm a lift manufacturer in the EU with quite a few certificates. Do I need to certify? Now it's gone, sorry. This was too fast. Just give me a second. So, hello, I'm a lift manufacturer in the EU with quite a few certificates. Do I need to certify all for the UK as well? Certifications such as full quality assurance, safety components, EU design examination certificate, lifting platform, EC type examination certificate, and so on.
Yes, you need to, depending on what you are making available on the market or what you're placing on the market. For example, if you have 10 certificates for a safety component, then I recommend to double check if you sell all those to the United Kingdom. Of course, you don't need to apply for 10 UK certificates. You can just apply for 5 or for 1, depending on which components you're really placing on the market there.
Okay. Now, I hope that I captured all of your questions, yeah? At least I can't see any additional ones in the Q&A section or in the chat. So let me just check. One more comment is here, whether you can clarify if for imported goods in UK or Great Britain, you always need a representative and an importer.
No, you don't need an authorized representative and an importer. What you need for sure is you need to have an importer. And if you don't find someone who takes all the obligations and the requirements, then you probably need to place an authorized representative by yourself. But if you find someone else, another company, who will be your importer, then you don't need an authorized representative.
Okay. I think that should be it. We are almost perfectly on time anyhow. 2 minutes to 11 CT, 10 BST. And I would like you to thank you again for joining us today. And as mentioned earlier, we will be sending a copy of the presentation along with the recording to yourself. Our next available webinar on UKCA, which is similar to this one today, for the UKCA marking for lifts and safety components, will be on the 21st of September. So there will be another one. In case you want to forward this invite to any of your colleagues, or also attend a second time for any unanswered questions until then. Again, you can register on the website of tufsu.com for the second webinar on 21st of December. As Jonas Conradis mentioned a couple of times, please feel free to get in touch with us via this email address currently being shared. And on behalf of myself and Jonas Conradi, I thank you very much for your time and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Bye-bye.